What's poppin', everybody? This is Logan Murdoch from Real Ones, and I have some big news to share. On Saturday, February 18th, the Ringer NBA show will be hitting the road for All-Star Weekend for a live show in Salt Lake City. You heard that right. We are taping the pod in front of a live audience in Salt Lake next month, and we want you to join us. Pull up on us at the Stateroom in the heart of downtown Salt Lake. You can grab your tickets now at thestateroom.com. That's thestateroom.com. Doors open at 9 o'clock. Show is at 10. It's going to be a 21 and up event. Come hang with the gang and chat, mid-season updates, draft preview, and even have a Q&A with us. Space is limited, so grab your tickets while they last at thestateroom.com or click the link in the description of this show. Hope to see y'all in there.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day or hiking or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago and the guy was like, you're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago. I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details.
Welcome back to another episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. My name is Kevin O'Connor, and joining, as always, is the Ringers J. Kyle Mann. What's going on, Kyle?
Not a whole lot, Kev. It's we're coming up on All-Star break here. A nice little breath, not in the exact middle of the season, but there's still draft stuff going on. There's crazy shakeup, man. I mean, we're feeling some fallout from the trade deadline. Are you rested up? Did you have a chaotic checking your phone every 3 seconds deadline, Kev? What's it like for you? Are you Shams level online, or are you just hanging back waiting for the dust to clear?
I'm not Shams level checking my phone trying to report stuff out. That guy's probably got 3-4 phones out at the same time. I cannot imagine the Shams experience or the Woj experience at the trade deadline. But I was definitely having a good time last Thursday. It was a great day. It was a really good day with the trade deadline.
It ended up being pretty eventful. Yeah, that's what me and Logan were talking about. If you like carnage, I think it was pretty fun. Shams must have blue light contact lenses or something that just stay on it. If you look at your phone that much, I don't know. I just think,
is that a thing? Do those actually help?
I just made that up. I don't know. Do they have actually the blue light contacts?
Glasses? No, they have glasses, right? Blue light glasses. Do those help? I don't know.
It's a technology fail-safe thing, guardrail that I just neglect completely. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Meg wears them and she says they work, but I also don't sleep a lot, so I don't know if it would help me that much.
I mean, you are a father. I mean, I guess young parents, that is part of it, losing sleep, and as did NBA executives last week on deadline week. We had a lot of good trades last week, and ultimately, though, Kyle, I'm a little disappointed in a couple of teams. The Bulls, they didn't make any moves. They currently have 26.3% odds of landing in the top 4, keeping their top 4 protected pick, or the Magic might get another lottery pick. The Raptors, with all the hype and the hoopla about them, they didn't make a trade. They got Jakob Poeltl. They didn't trade away OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, or Fred VanVleet. And the Pistons, they added James Wiseman. They didn't trade away Bojan Bogdanovic. The Spurs, they did trade away Poeltl, who we just mentioned. Rockets traded Eric Gordon. The Hornets traded a bunch, they traded McDaniels and Plumlee. It's not like they traded away major veterans necessarily, but, I don't think there was a lot of tank race movement with what we saw on deadline day at all, Kyle. I mean, the teams that are free falling, like Indiana, they're going to continue to fall. San Antonio's lost 13 in a row. They had their epic double overtime L against the Pistons earlier in the week. That was a great game.
That's a perfect tank. That Tyler Parker would be proud of that tank effort, because I know he's all about the play really hard, look great, trip at the finish line. That's the tank special, right? That's what you want to do.
It was one of the greatest days in Spurs history recently.
Yeah. Considering the way things are going right now for them, I'd say that's probably true. Yeah, it's a breath of fresh air. Yeah.
So not a lot changed when it comes to the tank race necessarily, but prospect values have changed over the course of the season. So today we're going to play a game of buy or sell in terms of, are you buying stock for these prospects? Are you selling stock before it totally goes to zero? Or are you holding what you got with these players that have had shaky or iffy seasons playing college basketball so far this year? So, Kyle, let's start off with Nick Smith, who you were super, super high on before the season. He was one of your guys, I believe, in our first episode when we kind of drafted some of our favorites. I think you took Nick Smith, and he's had an up and down year for his team this year with injury. He was out for nearly 2 months with right knee management. He returned earlier in the week, played only 17 minutes, 5 points on 2 of 7, 1 assist, 1 rebound. It has not been a great year for Nick Smith at Arkansas, 6'5", 185 pounds. You know, we've compared him to like a Jamal Murray-esque type of player or role. But are you still high on him, Kyle? Where are you at? Are you buying, selling, or holding the stock you have in Nick Smith?
I'm holding. I've been thinking a lot about this, but the hold doesn't necessarily mean he's staying in the exact spot. I think that, like, it's hard to go through this and not come away from it thinking like, well, I mean, it didn't go the way I expected it to. I mean, I think I picked him. I mean, he was like top 5, I think,
pretty high.
Of the college guys. I had him pretty high. For me, it's an exercise of watching this season, obviously, and being in and out of the lineup. Arkansas wisely has built their roster with a lot of guards, as we know, Anthony Black and Ricky Council. They have a lot of guys that granted, you know, losing Trayvon Brazile, I think kind of really, I think that hurt their season even more than losing Nick Smith.
Brazile, another potential NBA guy in the future.
Yeah, it was so fun to watch him earlier in the year, and I was so excited to watch him grow and watch this team grow together because I thought that they were going to end up being like one of the more competitive teams. Because this college basketball year, there is no big gorilla to take down. You know, I feel like it was open for them, and I was excited to watch that. But Nick Smith, every time he comes back, he hasn't had that poise and pace about him because I've just felt this franticness. Now, the last game where he came back, I was at Mississippi State, I think their last game, where he came back, and I didn't feel like he was pressing as much. He had a couple minutes. He had some defensive lapses. Arkansas just had some staggeringly bizarre like defensive lapses that were kind of keying in on like communication issues between their bigs and their guards. It was cracking me up how they'd make a little surge and then give up like the easiest back cut or the easiest inbound play. I'm staying firm though with him just because I still believe in the things that he can do. Superstar potential, I don't know about that. I think that he's probably like above average starter-ish is kind of where my heart is right now with him.
Is part of that belief, Kyle, and skills beyond the scoring, because he's 2 of 7 for 5 points in his return, but it is part of that belief in terms of above average starter, like playmaking skill, defensive skill. Is that part of it?
I think he absolutely could fall onto that developmental path of like the Beal Booker hero-ish type player. Like the shooting wise, I don't know if it's as like knockdown, reliable, quick, fluid. It hasn't been there, but also, you know, Booker had stretches during college. Booker hasn't shot it well. He shot it a little worse from 3 than you would expect in the NBA, even for as good a shooter as he is. So it's like it's hard to go through and just say like exactly, you know, there's this template that's going to predict who he is. Now, have I slipped? Probably. I still think he's probably a lottery guy for me. I would still consider him in like that maybe 7 to 12 range probably. But whereas like earlier in the season, you could have talked me into, I was such a believer in the skill set that the ball skills that I thought that he could maybe be in that 5'6" range, but like top 5'6". But yeah, I think the playmaking could grow to answer your question. Like I do but I'm operating from this standpoint of like having watched him a lot. I think I'm less willing to budge on this, I think, because of everything that I've seen before this year. And I feel like I think I came into the year a lot stronger or a lot more keen on him than you did, maybe just because of that stuff that I had seen pre-college. I mean, you seem like you're more willing to slip on him.
Yeah, I mean, I have him 16th on the current NBA draft guide big board that's up there. And I can't imagine I'll drop him any more than that. So I guess I kind of fall into the hold category. I'm not selling stock necessarily. I think with him, there's still a level of upside, and there's still also time left in the college season too. I mean, over this next month, he's never been able to get in a rhythm at all the whole year. He missed the start of the season. He comes back. It's really hard to get going midway through. He plays I think it was 5 games before he went out.
Yeah.
5 games, and then he comes back mid-year. It's tough for a guy to develop a rhythm, and I think with Nick Smith, it's worth holding. I'm a little surprised you're not buying low on stock with him right now.
Oh, you think I should dig in harder, basically?
I'm a little surprised there, Kyle, but maybe that's because there's other players that you do want to buy on. Somebody G.G. Jackson, perhaps?
No, hold on. Before we do G.G., that's a charged issue. I think that's a reasonable thing. Like, I mean, if you want to every single year, like we talk, and I think we're going to talk more about this, is that weirdness in single post-college or post-high school, there's value to be bought there. I think that's really reasonable advice. And I think you said a word that I think is critical, whether you mentor or not, like on bigger picture, is rhythm. And you compared him to Jamal Murray. Murray is a rhythm player. I was calling him a lather scorer, and Nick Smith absolutely is that. When you take away his rhythm and you get him out, and he doesn't quite know how to like fluidly move off of his teammates in the game. Doing it not in game action is different. I just think that is a factor here. It would take me a lot to like dissuade me from everything I'd seen in the past. Anyway, G.G. Jackson.
I think that's totally fair, Kyle. You're right. He is a rhythm guy, and that's why that Jamal Murray comparison. It's not a perfect 1-to-1. No. But it works as like a basic construct to understand his style of game. So G.G. Jackson, he's originally committed to North Carolina. He dumps them, goes to a different school, South Carolina Gamecocks, thinking he's going to be the guy. And then on February 4th, Kyle, after the game on Instagram Live, he's complaining to everybody in his chat saying, bro, I'm not even getting plays drawn up for me in crunch time, bro. Come on, man. I'm not even getting plays. I'm supposed to be the man. And now, in the 2 games since, Kyle, he's coming off the bench. 27 minutes, then 12 minutes. His team broke an 8-game losing streak last game. Got a win with him playing a season low 12 minutes. It's been
That's an indictment there.
Really, really, really bad year for G.G. Jackson, Kyle. But 6'9", shot creator. It has not been a good year for him. But are you buying stock with him? Is this a perfect buy low opportunity for G.G. Jackson? Or are you selling? Are you holding? What are you doing with G.G.?
This one is way tougher for me because, like we were talking about the pre-college stuff. I was a believer in like his upside as maybe a creator that like I thought it could happen. Man, if you are like just over 18 years old and you're starting at a Power 5 school and having all the offense run through you, I mean, we had this very conversation on this show just recently where you were talking about Jarris Walker and comparing him, and I was like, Gigi is like way on ball, way more on ball. It's just a little tone deaf for him to be complaining about that. And I mean, interesting that the South Carolina staff drew the line and were just like, no, I mean, you're not, they didn't let him walk on him. I respect that. But I mean, Gigi, you're ironing things out right now. I mean, I'm sure they're trying to win some games here at the end of the season, and the efficiency thing, you got your reps. I don't totally understand what he's complaining about. Maybe there was one particular game where he had an expectation. I'm softer on him right now. I don't see how you can not be. I feel like he's probably mid to late first rounder now, but the age thing, God, it's just hard. When you're just over 18 years old, is it unreasonable? Like, is it unreasonable to think that he could change, he could grow? That's what you're betting on, basically. Because if he was like handling this in a different way, I'd be way more inclined to believe in him. Doesn't it feel? Which are you more worried about? Let's say he had a perfect attitude and he was on court and he was getting these reps, like we said, as a young guy in a Power 5 conference. Would you feel better about it if he was handling this sort of quietly? Like, I don't know. Which is more of a red flag for you, the basketball or the off court stuff?
I'd rather he say, you know what? According to Synergy Sports on the year, I'm shooting 12 out of 60 on isolations this year. I need to be better. I got to be better to continue receiving these opportunities. It shows in the stat sheet. It shows in the advanced stats tracking data on Synergy. Not that I expect any player to be citing Synergy at a presser, or never mind on Instagram Live, but it would be nice to see some accountability. You don't necessarily deserve all these touches when you're underwhelming at the thing that you're supposed to be the best at. So yes, Kyle, he's young, just over 18. You're not going to give up on GG Jackson. He's 6'9". He's fluid. He's got a handle. He's going to be the youngest player in the 2023 draft class if he does declare. And that's the other interesting thing he said in that IG Live. He's like, I'm thinking about coming back. So, I mean, I don't know.
He's all over the place. Hold on. You know what this reminds me of? This is just we're submitting evidence to the court here that you and I are both processing together here. So it's like, if you think back about like Anthony Edwards pre-draft said, there's some people who just, they emotionally process things out loud. So you hear things that are over here, that are over here, that are over here. Maybe like, and at 18 years old, Ant was doing that. Ant was just like, nah, I don't really like basketball. We were all like
football
what?
More. Yeah.
and earlier in the year, man, this is even more contradictory. I'm pretty sure Gigi talked openly about how like the speed of the game was like kind of bothering him, that he was adjusting to and things like that. So I think consider all of those things. There's also a lot of factors that I don't know that you and I are necessarily in the position to like make a judgment on emphatically about like who he is as a person. That's pretty erroneous, perilous thing to do. But though that's interesting, isn't it? Like, I mean, but these guys that kind of, he just seems like somebody that you can't take any one given quote and just say, well, oh my God, like I feel this way about this person. Doesn't it feel like?
Yeah, you're not going to plummet him like off your draft board just because he's an 18-year-old kid on Instagram saying, I should be getting more touches. I mean, you could look at it like the other way. You could say, oh, he's a competitor. He wants the opportunities and he wants the responsibility on his shoulders down the stretch of a close game. You could say it that way too. That's like the most optimistic way to look at it. But it does show that he has some growing up to do. Like, you don't go on Instagram Live and trash your coaching staff. You just don't do that.
Yeah.
It's a bad move.
Remember, Michael Porter Jr. was on a playoff team, and he went to a post-game presser and was like, and he had barely played any basketball to that point at a higher schemed level. And he was like openly complaining about getting shots in an NBA press conference. And I think that MPJ's matured. I mean, like, I think that we've seen him grow in some ways that are really positive and productive. He's in a good environment for that. Mm-hmm. It could be one of those situations for even Bol, I think, had some like times where people were like, is he taking it seriously enough? There were worries about him, and he's matured. It can happen for everybody. Now, whether or not a team wants to invest a lottery pick worth of money into that, that's another question. But I mean, I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried, skeptical about him right now. Are you seem like you're kind of holding the fort too, like you're holding the line a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a kid.
Yeah.
Just a kid. So to be clear, are you buying more stock, buying low? Are you holding what you got, or are you selling while you still can?
I'm holding, not buying. I'm not. Okay. I'm definitely not going in.
Let's move on to Baba, aka Bubba Miller.
Bubba Miller,
out of Florida State. He's having a spectacular year, Kyle, averaging 3.6 points per game, shooting 2 of 14 from 3. We talked about him after his debut, which was an underwhelming debut for Florida State after missing the first 14, 15 games with some crap suspension. He's played 9 games since, 17.1 minutes per game. It has not been productive for him by any means. Are you buying, holding, or selling, Kyle?
Are we doing this like we're selling based on like where we have them now?
Selling while you still can. Like you don't want to lose any more of your money. You're just going to sell now and maybe reinvest it elsewhere.
Because I was already skeptical. So I'm like, am I selling my skeptical stance? I just feel like, and people should know the Bubba Miller running bit is like one of the dumbest running bits ever, but I constantly laugh about this guy named Bubba Miller. I bought that trailer from Bubba Miller. My hopes and expectations and ideas of who he is have come down a little bit, but it's also small sample theater. Everything has a caveat. Everything has an asterisk. It's like it has been a delayed start for him on a bad Florida State team. I think the athletic pop has has been the most striking thing to me. Is the shooting the thing that you're keying in on from what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, I mean, he's shooting 2 of 14, and offensively, he looks kind of lost out there. But I think with Miller, it's the type of thing where I was watching some of his defensive possessions in preparation for this, and he's had some good moments. He's had some good moments switching on to guards on the perimeter, moving his feet, looking gigantic, with 6'10", with this long wingspan. I mean, he's had some moments. I feel good. If anything, I mean, I might be buying a little bit, like the stock. It's like a penny stock right now.
I can't follow this game. You're like, if the stock's going down, I'm okay. All right. If you're leaning in. I might
buy a little stock. I might drop him down my rankings, but also be like, yeah, why not? There's still something there that's worth taking a gamble on.
It seems like a conflict of interest. You're gaming your own rankings to. Isn't this like insider trading a little bit here?
My rankings don't do anything.
That I don't know, but
I'd be shocked.
Yeah, I think I expected a little more springy, like we talked about, like sort of the Jaden McDaniels-y type, big, long guy who brings some of that interior size, but with mobility out to the perimeter. Like he does move, and like the mobility and speed and twitch and things being different. Like I do think that he's mobile, but I just haven't been super impressed with like his like ability to get off the floor quickly, his ability to like close out quickly and high. Yeah, I already was like skeptical on him. I'm going to go ahead and just say, you want to just us together, just buy like a little penny, buy a little amount.
I'd buy a little bit. Yeah,
that one's the toughest one, I think, honestly. Because I was already kind of moving that direction anyway. But, yeah.
All right, so let's move on to Duke's Dereck Lively. He had best game of the season recently against North Carolina. Played 34 minutes, had 8 blocks, 14 rebounds, but then he followed it up with a dud in 11 minutes in a loss against Virginia with 3 fouls, 0 blocks, only 11 minutes. Duke just won a game tonight against Notre Dame. He had 6 points. I didn't see any of the game for what it's worth. Was watching NBA tonight ahead of our recording at 6 points, 6 rebounds, 2 blocks. I saw a clip, of him blocking some shots on defense. It looks like another, highlight-esque game, but it's been a major up and down year for Dereck Lively, who entered as one of the top prospects in the draft, 7'1", 230 pounds, a top high school recruit, goes to Duke. And now a lot of people don't even have him in the first round, Kyle. Are you buying Dereck Lively stock? Are you selling? Are you holding what you got?
I kind of wonder if he should come back. I really wonder if he should come back to school, because this has been, you get in here and it feels like one of those situations where you could get lost. You were talking about him being ranked high. I mean, he was number 2 overall RSCI. But I think there are some really, and this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier, is that
So are you buying, selling, or holding?
Can I not talk out loud for a second before I
I gotta know, Kyle.
I might buy it cheap. Okay. And here's why. Okay. There's a number of factors. He's 19 years old. His skill set, we haven't, everything that we had seen from him, and this is like, on a team that doesn't work, basically, if you're looking at that and you're deciding, like, are there flashes of things there that make sense that I think will translate in like a better situation will pop even more. This Duke team is weird. It is not working. It is not cohesive. Their guards, either like Proctor has had a hard time being efficient scoring the ball. Jeremy Roach is honestly infuriating to watch at times. Like there are so many easy baskets that Lively could get just off of simple, like, Jeremy Roach sees 2. Like, they run this one play, they run this one set where the action starts with a right side pick and roll, and 9 times out of 10 he either gets iced towards the sideline or blitzed, and Lively will just roll wide open. Proctor hits him on that play, but they're little easy opportunities that he gets robbed of. But I was going through and just trying to think of, if you think of guys of his body type that aren't totally like hang back and play drop, but they're not really like the switchy Mobley, AD, like Garnett level type players that can, do both, protect the rim and guards. I feel like that's probably more like the name you brought up, Willie Cauley-Stein. But the thing is, I was looking at like Nick Claxton is a guy that we're all really high on. And do you remember Nick Claxton as a freshman? Because nobody really talked about Nick Claxton as a freshman. And if you imagine they look kind of similar, honestly. Like if you go back, Claxton he was a little less efficient. Are we being too hard on him for his age is what I'm wondering, because Claxton's turned into a really good player. Could that happen for Lively?
I think it's very possible for sure. I mean, he can finish. He can play make a little bit. I'm not sure he's going to be running point like Claxton did his sophomore year in college necessarily.
It was fun to watch.
Yeah, it's super fun to watch. I mean, I think that's the thing people forget about Nick Claxton. I mean, as he's like in this rim runner role, right? Screen and roll hard to the basket, cut to the basket. I mean, that dude ran some point in college.
It was weird. That was a weird Georgia team.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. And I think with Lively, the inconsistency, it's the decision-making, it's the reading of the floor. I think you're right on, Kyle. Another year for Dereck Lively, I mean, he could play himself into the lottery. I would not rule that out at all. No.
Well, and another thing too here, that we should be clear though, that like there are errors of like omission for him in terms of like his defensive stance. A lot of times I've noticed like some of his closeouts are just like super, super lazy. He'll come up on the ball and just like his feet will be all wrong. He'll be way too high. He'll stand straight up at times and get beaten by players that he shouldn't be getting beaten by. He will get lost sometimes in actions where like if it's like a 3-man action and there's like he just has had a hard time doing the like the decision making of like multiple actions in front of him. That's been an issue. But he has shown the ability to get big and block shots. He's shown the ability to close out and erase mistakes. He's shown little flashes. I mean, every single one of his threes has like hit the hard back rim. So that stuff is like a whole separate issue. I would be curious to see if Duke makes the tournament, if he comes out, because I do wonder if a second year would be good for him. Because Willie Cauley-Stein's another one you brought up. He was lost at Kentucky his freshman year. So it's kind of, you have to be fair about the ages and what you expect from them developmentally, I think.
So in high school, he was the second ranked player according to RSCI. And now, like I said, people talk about him as a late first, early second. What was misunderstood about Lively at the high school level? Like, why do you feel like there's such a discrepancy between high school ranking compared to his current NBA draft projected draft area?
That's a good question. That's what I'm asking. Like, I would love to know. I mean, I personally, and from conversations I've had with people, I did not have him ranked that high. I thought that ranking was a little juiced in a way that is creating some of these expectations, quite honestly. I guess you're just seeing his motor and maybe thinking of him in the Jalen Duren way. Jalen Duren was ranked really high and then had a weird freshman year at Memphis. Ended up going later than probably he expected to, but he was a reclass, so he was super young. I assume that's what it is. I assume that they thought of him in that Mobley mold, but I just don't think that some of those things are really hard. I was thinking about those actions where he was getting lost and things like that. And I was like, I wonder if the mental stretch for him, if his high school did he guard sophisticated actions like that in high school? I don't know. I don't remember specifically. I'd have to go back and check it out. Maybe that's why. Do you think that maybe they anticipated what his role would be at the NBA level? I mean, what are your thoughts?
I mean, and at Duke, you mean, like in college?
No, I mean, when they were watching him in high school, did they see an endpoint that was unrealistic for him? Like
maybe. I think also part of it is he has not shot the ball well from the perimeter at all for Duke. I think maybe they're imagining him as this 7'1" guy who's shooting threes at least at a competent level. Yeah. And I think that would change the way you imagine what he is as a talent. And so I think that probably gave him a boost to become the number one on a lot of rankings rather than a guy who was more like in the Kel'el Ware range. He was 6th ranked, or Jarris Walker was 8th ranked. Maybe he would have been more in that category rather than the 7'1" guy who can block shots and defend on the perimeter and shoot threes and finish it loudly around the rim. I assume maybe that was what put it over the top for him to be ranked so highly.
I don't know. Mitchell Robinson was another guy like that, like where it was like he was super, super efficient no matter where he was. And that was something you could bank on. And another thing here, and some of this is playing with the guards. I think like his free throw rate, when you compare it to Jared Allen as freshman, as Jared Allen, who is probably one of the higher forms of this type of player, I would say, Willie Cauley-Stein, Jackson Hayes, and Nick Claxton. His free throw rate is by far the lowest. Claxton's actually was by far the highest. I don't know. I think that those are like 4 other players that are pretty similar to me in terms of body type. Not quite a perimeter guy, not quite a true Parkham at the rim big. That's kind of the range that I fall in. I don't know. I'm trying to measure your level of skepticism here. It seems like you're not thinking he could. I don't know. Do you agree with me that maybe he should come back?
Yeah, I think he should come back for sure. I have him ranked 30th on my board currently on the Ringers NBA draft guide, and I don't expect that to move too much at all. I think he's worth a shot. But like some of these guys, they take forever to develop, and I at this point wouldn't feel great about investing a lottery pick in him by any means. So if you're Lively, the risk in doing that is if you come back next year and you're no better, I mean, suddenly you're a second-round pick, and maybe even worse than that. So I think for Lively, he should probably at least test the waters and see how he does during the pre-draft process. But there should be a chance that he returns. And I'd say similar things. Let's move on to his teammate, Dariq Whitehead, who is actually the number 1 ranked player for RSCI. He was ranked number 1 by Rivals, number 2 by ESPN, number 3 by 24/7 Sports, number 1 overall, though, when you look at the average ranking. Dariq Whitehead this year, I believe he was another guy that like we talked about early on in the season. Granted, he missed the start of the year for Duke. So far this year, he's averaging 8.5 points per game, shooting 38.1% from 3, only 39% from the field. What has he shown, Kyle, so far? Are you buying, selling, or holding your Dariq Whitehead stock?
I'm holding because I feel like there's some odd stuff going on. I might even lean towards buying a little bit, honestly, because it's another thing like the Nick Smith thing where physically he doesn't look right. Like he just does not look right. He looks sluggish. He just looks stiff. He doesn't look as flexible and elastic as he did in the past. He's another guy that I think has had a choppy. I was telling you, like, I really can't remember. I can't remember another like top 3 combination of high school players coming into college and having a weirder single college season than this. And I think, you talk about the weird year and like playing to value. Some team out there is looking at this situation and just being like, please let him fall to us. Like it just physically, he doesn't look right to me. Doesn't he look slow? He can't turn the corner on anybody. He just doesn't look like himself.
Yeah. I mean, he hasn't shown a whole lot at all. And this is, again, part of it, though. We mentioned this in regards to Nick Smith. When you come back in the middle of the season, after missing the start, it's tough, man. Like that is tough. So I think for Dariq Whitehead, in some ways, that's why he deserves a little bit of a pass. But it's not like he missed a whole lot of time. Like Nick Smith has missed a whole lot more time. I believe Dariq Whitehead missed 3, 4, 5 games at the start of the year before returning.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a significant amount of time, but still, missing any time and then going back. That was the thing with Tatum to, a much, larger degree. He wasn't the same on defense with the foot issue he had in college. It affected him on that end. It made him more sluggish, and it didn't matter. He's now one of the best defensive players in basketball, one of the most versatile players. So I think when you're judging these guys, if they miss time, that needs to be factored into the equation, especially if they look a bit more sluggish. With that said, though, I think with Whitehead, it's not like he's ever been, an elite shooter at any level. He was 34.6% on 272 attempted threes in high school competitions, according to the competitions that Cerebro Sports tracked. So he's been below average from behind the arc. He hasn't been like a 40% plus guy. With Whitehead, Kyle, like what type of skills do you see translating to the NBA based off what we've seen so far this year?
Well, I mean, getting to the rim, I think the sort of like push and pull of his game is that's been robbed from him, honestly, at the college level. I think is that like the getting to the rim part of it just isn't there because he just can't seem, like I said, to turn the corner. He looks less flexible to me. He's not getting lower with the ball, like you said. And I mean, like the shooting has been okay. I just think that's probably the most like pitchable thing with him is I think he could be a two-way player. And we've seen the same thing with AJ Griffin too. I mean, AJ Griffin physically looked weird at times last year. And we were like, hey, he's slow, he's sluggish. Can he turn? And he's looked a lot more mobile and fluid at the NBA level. There's so many factors that go into this stuff, man. I mean, that's what I expect from him. I expect him to be like a two-way player who can create rim pressure and be a spot-up player. And then, you have a whole pathway for like developing your creation and your playmaking and things like that.
So you're buying with him right now.
I still, the physical thing is so jarring to me that I'm like, that's not right. Like something's not right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I am with him.
So Maxwell Lewis at Pepperdine, we've talked about him a couple of times throughout the season. He, over his first 15 games, averaged 19.4 points per game, was shooting 43.8% from 3, 60% from 2. A lot of lottery hype. I had him ranked in the lottery at the time. Since then, however, over his last 12 games, he's averaging only 15.3 points, shooting 21.4% from 3, 48.7% from 2. He's had a lot of dud performances on offense after his fast start. His numbers are now more or less resembling what he did as a freshman. With Maxwell Lewis, Kyle, did we jump the gun at all? And are you buying, selling, or holding your Maxwell Lewis stock?
Well, if you kind of look down through here, there is sort of a correlation between conference play. Earlier in their schedule, you can see, they did play some high majors, and you look against like some of the high majors like UCLA, he didn't have a huge outing. I don't know, just go through here. That's one correlation you could say. I don't know. I'm just postulating that to you. Do you think that the conference play thing is a factor? Is that maybe bringing him back to earth a little bit?
I think that's probably part of it. Tougher competition. He's faced some, stiffer defenses as well. So, including St. Mary's, one of the top defenses in all of college, and that was one of his worst performances. I forget if we talked about that one after that game, but
I don't think we did.
He just has not been as nearly as potent as he was earlier in the year. I still like him. I still think if you look at his circumstances at Pepperdine, if you plug him into a top college team with his type of skill set, he'd be a lot better if there weren't so much pressure on him to have to create so much offense, do so much off the dribble. If he could focus more on busting his ass on defense and spotting up from 3, attacking in secondary pick and roll rather than being one of the primary guys, I think Maxwell Lewis's numbers would look a whole lot better in against this tougher competition. It's a lot on his shoulders right now. So I think with Lewis, if people are dropping him down their rankings significantly, I'd be buying with Lewis right now. I still think he has an NBA skill set, and I'd be happy if his stock were falling to like late first round. If I'm a team drafting back there, I'd be like, please keep falling to me, please.
Yeah, that's a player that you can just plug right in. It's that joke that I think I said this to you like 2 or 3 years ago. It's like it's wings like this that have shooting and playmaking. It's like when someone offers you a piece of gum, you're always going to say yes to that. It's just like, of course I want a piece of gum. If you look at Maxwell, if you look at the way his pie is sliced up, though, it's like, right, he does primarily play off the ball, off the catch, but, he's hovered right around 30% usage. That's going to be lower. And, that the focal point is going to be off of him. And I do believe that he's a clever player, I do expect that. I tend to put stock in that. I think in the speed of the modern game, I think that players that think the game, especially with those other skills we talked about, it's critical sort of hardware, software type thing. Like it's critical for you to be able to expand your game if you can think the game like he does. So I still am a believer. I agree with you. If he falls down in the first round, assuming he goes in the first round, I'd be elated. It seems like a move that one of these good teams that is already competent is going to just snatch him up, and we're going to be like, damn it, look at that. They knew. They were waiting for that to happen.
For sure. He could 100% be that type of guy. Let's move on to Dillon Mitchell, freshman out of Texas. Left-handed player this season for Texas. He has not performed well at all, despite being another one of those top high school recruits. He was the 5th ranked high school recruit. So this is our 3rd guy we've talked about. 4th guy in this single podcast when it comes to buy, sell, or hold. Whitehead was number 1, Lively number 2, Nick Smith number 3, Kyle Filipowski number 4, and then Dillon Mitchell here number 5. This year for Texas, he's averaging only 5.6 points per game, shooting 45.5% from the free throw line, 61.8% from 2. He has attempted a grand total of 0 3-pointers, despite being a 6'8" wing type of player. That's a pretty important skill, Kyle. Like you just said with Maxwell Lewis, you say yes, please, with a 3-and-D type of skill set player. Mitchell is a D, but no, he has no 3. Are you buying, selling, or holding with Dillon Mitchell?
I'm selling, man. I just think you're starting to add too many caveats. I think if you're gonna add caveats, or you're gonna add sort of like minuses, we'll say minuses, we have to be so heady about it. If you're gonna add these minuses and keep stacking them up, at some point, if you're somebody that can't really dribble or can't, that's honestly the thing that's been most alarming for me is his ball security around the basket. He's shaky with the ball. If you're going to be like, we talked about like Andre Jackson, I said he's sort of in that phylum of like a floater connector. You see him floating in the dunker spot a lot. He's a screener. He's a cutter. Like you said, but like failing to handle the ball, failing to bend the defense. I saw several plays, them playing Texas Tech the other day. He would catch the ball on the perimeter and like, if you're a non-shooter, I'd like to see you be able to at least attack the basket or like run into a dribble handoff or something. He just kind of dribbled around the defense and handed it back to the guard. And I was like, okay, we didn't accomplish anything there. So it's like at that point, I'm like, what are you adding? And the jump shot, like you said, it's odd. Like it doesn't seem like he doesn't have like a hitch in it. It doesn't seem like it's not soft. I'm kind of wondering if we see Dillon Mitchell in the NBA at all at this point. I don't know. Like, where are you on that?
I mean, he doesn't really know how to use his offhand. I mentioned he's a lefty. He doesn't use his right hand much at all to dribble, pass, do much of anything. He, doesn't even look at the rim from behind the arc. He doesn't necessarily have like you mentioned Jackson, the feel as a connective piece, as a playmaker, cutter, that connective piece in an offense can be so valuable. Like Bruce Brown with Denver. Granted, his three-point shot has improved. He shoots well in that offense as he has for a couple of years on a lower volume. But those guys can find value. It's just Dillon Mitchell hasn't found that. And that's where it worries me. Like in a lot of ways, I think with him, he needs to at least be a threat to shoot or somebody who figures out all of those other glue guy type of stuff. Because otherwise, you're talking about him at 6'8". He's a good defender. He's not like some elite lockdown, I got to have this guy on the floor type of defender. He's good. You're talking about him the way kind of Jock Vaughn talked about Ben Simmons the other night.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I was like, you put that down, and I was like, it's funny that we're at this point. Were you meaning to compliment him or diss him with that comparison?
It's a total diss because it's like, well, where am I going to plug him in?
Yeah.
What's he offering me on offense if he doesn't space the floor, but he's also not, doing all these connective things? If he's I don't know. It's tough to find a fit for Dillon Mitchell right now. It's tough. I'd probably be selling some Dillon Mitchell stock at the moment. And I'd be willing to be wrong. Like if he figures it out, it's like, all right, cool. Somebody else took the gamble and I whiffed. Okay, that's fine. I'd be okay with being wrong.
Is he another Billy Madison? Back to school, back to school.
Yeah, he probably should.
Prove the draft nerds I'm not a fool. I mean, it's possible. I mean, the 2-point percentage is pretty alarming, like you said. I mean, it's just, and Texas has had a pretty decent season despite this. Like, I mean, they're 20-4, 9-3 in the conference. You were talking about him preferring to go left. I was watching him, dude, and like he went left every single time. I mean, it was to the point. I hate to compare him to Kentucky guy. He kind of reminded me of the way Jacob Toppin does the same thing. It's like, okay, well, off the catch, we know he's going to drive this way, so people shade him that way. So it's just like it's a non-starter. It's like kaput from the start. So I have come way, way down. I'm really worried about Dillon Mitchell. I want to see more of those connective tools that we talked about because that's the pitch for him. And if that pitch isn't there, what are you at that point? Because if you're just a defender, we can't have you out there. You got to have a plus.
All right, so to go through this, Nick Smith, you're holding. G.G. Jackson, you're holding. Bubba Miller, you're buying. Dereck Lively, buying. Dariq Whitehead, buying. Maxwell Lewis, buying. And then Dillon Mitchell, tough luck. You're selling your stock with him. And with some of those buys, you're buying low. It's buy low. You're buying low on a tanking stock, hoping that they revive. Right?
Sure.
It's pennies right now for a Miller.
Yes. And to recap, what about you? So let's make sure you're on record too.
I didn't choose one for each of them.
Okay. All right. Nice punt, Kev.
Let's move on.
I don't think. Well, you're the one with the draft guide, so I think that's fair. I think this is fair.
My update will be coming soon.
Put the sword to my throat. Yeah.
Let's move on to the weekly Wemby. He had 29 points on 10 of 20 in 37 minutes. With 9 rebounds and 4 assists in their most recent game, a Mets 92 win. His teammate, though, Kyle, we're going to pivot from Wemby to Bilal Coulibaly. And he is a 6'7" wing with a 7'3" wingspan. He barely played at all earlier this season, but he was dominating for their under 21 team. And now he's earned minutes for Mets 92. They have some guys out. Some minutes are open, available for him. He had 14 points on 6 of 6 shooting in their most recent game with 7 boards and a career-high 34 minutes. Also had 2 assists. Like I said, he's 6'7". He's a 7'3" wingspan, only 18 years old. I saw a Jonathan Wasserman at Bleacher Report tweeted about him. Jonathan Gavoni with DX tweeted about him. A number of people are in the draft community, are the bigger names, the people who are like our hardcore numbers guys are talking about him as a potential first-round pick, at least a second-round pick. What are your thoughts on Wemby's emerging French teammate, Coulibaly?
I enjoyed hearing the French announcers say it. Coulibaly. I think I'm getting that right, or close. So hopefully, if I'm not, let me know. It's fun. I tweeted about this. This is another fun thing, and this just speaks to what kind of player he is. He is chaotic and erratic right now in a way that like mainly in his decision making. You see him make a lot of just sort of like weirdly timed off the mark passes, and to hear chaos like that called in the French language is wonderful. I'll just say, shout out to the French language, because I'll just hear that they'll be like, oh no, like they just start like yelling at some of the choices he makes, and I'm just like laughing my ass off. He is very springy, very elastic, very bendy. He gets off the ground really quickly when he's in the air. He can power through contact for his age, like you said. A lot of guys who are younger like that, you'll see them kind of like bending around defenders. He like takes the bump and goes. His shot kind of to me feels like, you project him as a guy who's going to guard wings, space the floor. I think we're a long way away from like depending on him in any kind of real way as a decision maker, but that's okay. His shot to me feels a little like learned and rehearsed, which is typical for guys of his athleticism, his level of athleticism. I don't expect him to be like a movement shooter anytime soon, but off the catch, if he can make wide open threes, you talk about like attacking the basket in the ways that Dillon Mitchell doesn't. He is very slinky. He can turn in the corner, gets very low with the ball, and then he gets off the floor quickly with those long arms. That stuff's tantalizing. I mean, if you think about the athletic wings in this draft, he's very intriguing.
Do you see first round upside for him this year, 2023, or is he more of a 2024 guy?
Is it a pre-draft is my question. Do you think a team sees him and just steals him now? No, seeing those promising things, I think that's very possible. This seems like one of those draft nights ones where people are like, who? And like, I could see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, unless, Mets 92 over the course of the rest of the season, if he continues receiving minutes and if he continues excelling, I mean, this guy, like he had 34 points, 37 points for their under 21 team. He was dominating. So if he continues playing well or even continues improving alongside Victor Wembanyama with the amount of eyeballs that are on him, I mean, I could see him rising pretty fast where he becomes more of a, maybe not a well-known name, because I don't think any non-lottery, non-top 10 or even top 5 guys are well-known names, when it comes to the NBA draft, but he could become somebody that like a lot of like hard people who listen to this podcast, right? People who are on the NBA draft subreddit or on NBA draft Twitter, right? Those people are going to know him and they're going to be like, yo, bid first round draft pick, not a major shock, but like the mainstream, who just latch onto the draft late, I think maybe they'd be shocked saying, who is this guy? I could see that. I definitely could see that with him. For sure. 6'7", 7'3" wingspan, can defend. Yeah. As long as the shot remains mildly productive, he's a smart, intelligent cutter. I like him. I like him a lot. And it's cool that we're, all eyes on Wemby, that he gets to play alongside him and, have the attention drawn to him. I'd love if Wemby could, over the course of this year, if he could elevate his teammates as well. Like if Wemby is, playmaking, hitting him on cuts to the rim, it'd be cool to see them connect together a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there are advantages to swimming next to the big shark, so there is sort of like a symbiotic like benefit thing here that I think it could, if Wemby's interested in that, I think he's very capable of doing that. But I think that's a lot of where his life is right now. I think if you're going to pre-draft him, if you're going to think about taking him a year early, I think you're going to have to look. The feel thing, I think, is where I would judge whether or not to make that decision. Agree or disagree with that? That's the tricky thing is like, how do you make that decision watching him? Because a lot of the stuff he does right now is in the open court. A lot of the productive impact things he does are in the open court. I was trying to think of just a sort of rough comp-ish thing. I don't know that I have one off the top of my head right now. I haven't sat down and really thought about it. Do you have one? Like, just not holding you to it, but do you have kind of a vague idea of somebody that he's similar to?
No, nothing comes to mind at the moment.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, no.
We'll talk. We'll maybe we could take this to Twitter or revisit it. But yeah, if you guys have one that you think of, let me know. I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that too. Kyle, to wrap up today's show, what are you watching this coming week for our TV guide?
This coming week, we were talking about maybe checking in on Kansas TCU to check in on some of their bigger wings. You mentioned the Tennessee-Kentucky game. I'm personally, if I could not watch that just and get off scot-free, I would, because I don't want to watch this team anymore. It's joyless. It's a joyless pursuit. But if you want to pick one to
Why are they
watch,
joyless, Kyle? Why? Why is Kentucky joyless?
I think the big part of it is that this team is probably the worst passing team of the Calipari era, if not very close to it. I think they're built around a guy who can't pass out of the post, is not a good defender. I think Oscar Tshiebwe's. I mean, I always talk about like if you're going to play the pick and roll, if you're going to play pick and roll defense and drop like he wants to, you got to be able to play multiple games of blackjack at once. He can barely play one. He just has gotten torched by teams that like are quicker off the perimeter and make him think. And they just lack ball skills, man. I think, their guards can't fight through screens. They're not secure with the ball. Cason Wallace has been weird all year, like we talked about, another weird year guy. And they just don't seem happy. It's just been a weird, joyless season. And it's a team that's precariously put together. And when one thing doesn't work, the car breaks down and they're just not flexible at all. So they're frustrating to watch, Kevin. I'm pretty defeated mentally with them, to be honest with you.
Well, Kyle, we're recording this on Tuesday night. Happy
all right, and with that,
I'm doing this Zoom from the Sherman Minton Bridge in Louisville. I really unloaded on you. Sorry, haven't been to therapy in a year. Yeah, sorry about that, Kev.
Here to listen.
Oh, geez. Sorry about that.
Kyle, I look forward to next week during our All-Star Weekend post show. Maybe we'll talk about what we see from Scoot Henderson and some of the young guys in the NBA this coming weekend. I look forward to it.
Yes. Can't wait, man.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. Thank you to Jessie, Lopez for producing. Hope you have a great rest of your week.